All right. Hello and welcome to another new era, Minecraft Musing. So, I wasn't sure about posting that last one. I was kind of running out of steam last night, and I'd finally looked up what Carlos Coy, what his crimes were, and lo and behold, it was for a 9-year-old. And so, just like especially with the recent Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef, um, it's basically, and actually, let me go ahead and set this to. We're just going to do a short one this morning because I got a work meeting here coming up. So it'll be about like a 20 minute, 22 minute, either way. So I am uploading it as we speak because, like, it is true. Like what I was starting to talk about in there is basically the idea that if we're going to make these solutions to solve humanity, we need to make them scalable to solve all crime, all problems, all things with society that we would prefer to see stop happening. Specifically, assaults on minors. That's the biggest thing. If you gave me a magic wand and said you can take away one thing from this world, well, I guess it. Nah, okay, like two things: murder and assaults on children. Now, assaults on adults, yeah, that's bad too. That's not great. But if you assault a child, like that could potentially ruin their life, like psychologically, at least until they're old enough to do like mushroom therapy. But again, like why? It's not okay. Like kids need to be protected to a point. Like, and then amongst themselves, like okay. I mean, I don't know. Alcohol is still one of the biggest underlying cruxes of the problem because people don't act the same when they've drank alcohol, especially if you drink a lot of alcohol. You're not liable for your actions at all. You're likely to do any number of things, like release bodily fluids everywhere, and like do sex stuff, like with trees and park benches, like let alone like God forbid you're around like a kid or something. And I don't know. But even then, I feel like people are pretty messed up if at their drunk self, because when you're drinking, it reveals like who you are on the inside. And I don't know. And understanding the psychology and like the factors that lead to an assault on a minor, like, I mean, and then I saw a Facebook post with all these other celebrities like dating minors, like 14 to 16 years old. And I get it, like 14 is still very wrong and sketchy, but I mean, that's a worlds different from 9 years old. Like, nine, that's like demonic. Like, I almost want to go and beat the crap out of Carlos Coy because 9 years old, I'm hoping he did. I'm hoping he got roughed up in there because, like, he needs to know that's not okay. And I know he spent 20 years in prison. I'll say that to his face. I will mess him up. Like, that's one of the things. I used to be a huge fan of his music, but now I think it's trash. Like, I don't know. Hopefully he learned his lesson, repaid his debt, but I don't think prison really fixes anyone, especially for that long. It just makes them, more damaged. But I think that's how we solve it. Like all child assault cases should just be a swift roughing up and then some classes and then monitoring. That's it. Like I mean, shelving people for decades doesn't really help. It just, I mean, you might as well kill them at that point. Like, but I don't condone murder either. So it's like, it is a tough situation. But I don't know. I know when I had my own personal experience in corrections, it was only a halfway house, but we did not let it slide. Like we knew there was child molesters in there, and we harassed the crap out of them. Like, I mean, not like daily or anything, but like they knew, and I didn't like doing it, but every time I just pictured like what did that poor kid go through, while you're doing that, they trust you, and then all of a sudden their mentor, or not even their mentor, just an adult. Adults are supposed to behave in a better way than that. And I'm sorry, like an 18-year-olds, they're not adults. They're young adults. In fact, we make that distinction. Like they're close. I mean, yeah, sure, you should be allowed some freedoms like pornography, adult material, stuff like that. Sure. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I gotta say, one of my role models died yesterday when I found that out, and I'm not happy about it because he makes some really good music. Like it was entertaining and it was fire. Like, but and people are getting mad at Drake for I think it's a 14. See, I can't even honestly find it on a Google search. There's so much other nonsense surrounding it that I don't know what to believe now. I was reading something that said Kendrick Lamar and Drake were actually pretty close friends once upon a time. And then now there's all this beef, and the beef wasn't even around like a young kid, I think at first. It was around money disputes and now it's coming out that he might have dated, might have. See, honestly, let's try it again. Let's ask Google very direct forward. Like, did Drake date a 14-year-old? That's okay. Because, and to be honest, my son told me that, like, how old the kid was. Like, my son's more in tune with this stuff apparently than I am. But yeah, here we go. Like, did Drake date a 14-year-old? There, just very simple question. Drake has denied allegations of having relationships with underage women and of harboring a secret love child, which were raised in a diss track by his rival Kendrick Lamar. Okay, so he denies it. Okay, and then in 2018, I'm looking at a Reddit thread. Drake reportedly dated then 18-year-old model Bella Harris. However, there are posts of them as in intimate positions as old as 2016. Okay, still messed up, but here's the thing. 16's legal in England, I'm finding out. It's still way too young. Like, I feel like that's just messed up. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Of course, you're going to be the coolest person they know. You have a car, you have a job, you have a house. Like, these are kids that are kids, young adults, kids, and not even young adults yet. 18 is when they're young adults. Then 18 to 22 is when, because we still don't let them drink in bars until they're 21. I mean, while other countries, yeah, and I think even this country, like I know a lot of people that they've let their kids drink at like 18, maybe even 16, like have like a beer or a glass of wine, like something so it's not the forbidden fruit and it's not completely foreign to them. And I have seen that firsthand. Like the kids that didn't drink in high school, they get wild in college. Like they're the ones like getting drunk, losing clothes, riding things like their vehicles and like, getting into trouble and like because they have no idea what this is. They've been granted all this freedom and nobody's there to tell them not to do it, so you got to let them experience a little bit. And I don't know, like I'm gonna let my kids a little bit once they're old enough, but I'm hoping they like weed. Like I mean that, I don't know, hacky sack and bud. And full disclosure, in high school I was smoking cannabis and I was excelling. I was doing great. I was an all-star athlete, like maybe not all-star, I didn't make all state, but I think I've claimed that before. Nah, that was just me bragging. Nah, I didn't make all state, but I did play football for 7 or 8 years. I think I quit sophomore year because I just couldn't take it anymore. I was at a weird time in my life. But then by the next year, I was like, okay, yeah, I want to do this. And senior year, there was no question. I was part of the team, so I think that's how it went down. And freshman, I don't know. I was just freshman was freshman, but it's like I was already dealing with a lot of other crazy transitions. And I played basketball and did track. I think I stopped playing basketball in high school. I did it all through middle school, and I was on the B team. And I just realized, you know what? I'm just not cut out for this. Like, I mean, because I'm switch-handed too. Like, I couldn't pick a dominant hand to shoot with. So every time I'd go for a shot, like layups, yeah, those are fine. I could do that because it was a distinct pattern, travel pattern that you needed to do, and that was fine. So I was okay with that. But yeah, trying to do anything like three pointers from downtown or anything. Sometimes I'd have a really good shot. Other times, and it was the same with we used to play warball, which was a type of dodgeball, and like I was really good or really terrible. Like I could zero laser focus like a shot, hit someone like very hard, very fast, very far away, or it would just be way off. Like I would throw it and hit the wall, like like not even close to the person. So it was a toss up. But the fact that I could just hit somebody so hard from so far away, like throwing a ball was great. Maybe I should have tried baseball, but I think baseball was during track season, and track was still better for football. I mean, any sports was good, and football was still the main focus. Like, we were crazy about our football program back in BV, still are. I mean, it's like a little mini Texas. And we hated Texas, too, because that's a whole nother thing. Just the field of exposure was we only got to see the rich folk from Texas. I'm sure I'd get along great with the poor people of Texas. In fact, I know I do. I have some friends from Texas, and like, closer to my economic class that I can relate to their problems, their struggles. They're not rolling their eyes like, oh, I can't take the car. I got to take my backup car. And it's like, whereas all those poor folk are like, oh, wow, my parents are trusting us to take the car for like half an hour. Like, oh, but they need it because they need to go do grocery shopping or something. It's like, the one family car or whatever, and unfortunately, all that's changing. Like, it's weird. Like, and you got to remember, if we're taking away all this stuff, like taking away industries and jobs and stuff and trying to pay all these people livable wages. Like you got to see it from the business owner's perspective. Like they can only afford to make so much money. And so, and I get it to a point there, and nobody wants to be publicly traded because then you have a bunch of shareholders that get to determine, the direction of the company. And people are even starting to make new types of board members, like where they're vested in it to a point. And then, the people that sit on the board are like nonprofits and stuff. Like, there's a lot of movement that way. And with good reason too. Like education is becoming insane, and I even paid a ton of money for my education, and I noticed that they started enforcing advisor meetings after my years because they probably had a lot of people like me that are like, oh, I'll just sign up for anything, this will work, and now you have to have an advisor meeting, you have to talk to somebody, and they can explain to you, be like, well, no, that doesn't satisfy the degree, you need to have this type of class. This is the easier class, or this is the one that's not really relevant to what you need. It's based on this. And so, and I remember actual computer science needed to be able to understand calculus. I did horrible in calculus, but I'll tell you one thing, I never needed to know calculus and all the things that I've done. Like, I mean, I get it if you're writing software and you're trying to do something like solve an equation for painting a building with AI. Like, you do need to know like the integral to determine the entire surface area of the area given the factors like the dimensions, the measurements and all that. And that makes sense. So in that moment, you would need to know calculus. About 90 to 95% of the rest of your life, you don't need to know calculus. Like, it's more of like a, can they jump over this bar and understand this very advanced mathematics and be okay? No, I'm just kidding. You do use a lot more math and computer science than that, but and even IT and other stuff, like you need to know some math. Like it's just required. Anyways, sorry, I just really sad about that Carlos Coy thing. And he's eligible for parole this October. Like I kind of want to like take a glimpse and see who he's become, what he has to say for a 9-year-old, and has he gotten the crap kicked out of him? Then maybe I'll be like, okay, you made a mistake, you learned your lesson. And I kind of get it, like when you're using like crack and coke and all that, like even meth. I mean, I'm sure he was on some meth. Like not all of that powder is like just what you think it is. Like they've laced that stuff with that. And now fentanyl, which is a scary thing. Like, if you're into drugs and stuff nowadays, there's a good chance that you'll end up ingesting some fentanyl. And that could be potentially deadly, and usually it's not wanted. At least from what I've seen, it's more of like people are just lacing it to make it more dangerous and more addictive. And then if they die, whatever, like we'll just get more people. And it's like, it's more just about the money at that point. Oh, it's a mess. But at the same time, not. Like as we legalize weed more and more, people are choosing that over alcohol. And alcohol, guess what? That was the real reason most people use hard drugs because, and I've experienced this. I've seen people like you go out to the bars with somebody that likes to do hard drugs. They won't even think about it until they've had a couple of beers. Then they're like, you know what? You know what this night needs? Let's go find something insane. Let's go get some good stuff. Let's go get some harder stuff. This alcohol is okay, these beers are okay, or this whiskey's okay, and especially hard liquor accelerates it like a million times. Like start taking shots of whiskey, you're in for a blackout night, and you're gonna do some stupid things. You might even end up in jail. You might break the law, but it's like peer pressure and all that. Like, oh, let's go see how crazy we can get, and then and then they're in their mind, this is how crazy they wanted to get, and then the next thing you know, you're in a hangover situation like the movie Hangover, where you're losing teeth, stealing tigers, and causing a mess, maybe driving, like, maybe killing people, all because you wanted to go hard, bro, and have some stories to tell your friends later. But then something else I've realized, nobody cares about the stories down the road. Like, yeah, I have some pretty outrageous stories. I thought I was going to have to try to dispose of my friend's dead body down in Costa Rica. Like, and looking back now, we had a lot of fun, but there was a few of those times where I probably should have been like, you know what? We're going a little too hard, fellas. Let's go to sleep. Like, let's take a nap. I mean, and I think they were all probably right there with me. It was just the peer pressure. My friend's alive. He's okay. I mean, he's not talking to me, but he's okay. And I don't think that's connected, but maybe, I don't know. But and then I saw something else interesting. I saw Snoop Dogg talking about how music streaming musicians aren't getting their money. And I kind of looked at that. I was like, I don't know how I feel about that because, like, granted, and I've been thinking about reaching out to musicians and asking them, now that they have all this money, to help people with their problems, or at least just put some plans in front of them. And I realize a lot of them don't have the money that I think they do, but even if they did, seeing little glimpses like that, they don't think they have the money that they think they do. They might not understand, like, yeah, they started off in the projects or trailer parks or like low income housing or all these like really ghetto places. And then they've just forgotten that over years and years of living in luxury and living, and not even luxury, just living comfortably. And understanding that you do a fraction of the work that most normal people do. A fraction. Like, yeah, it's hard to make music and to promote it and sell, but at the same time, like you could do a commercial and get paid a few $1,000s. Like you don't understand that. Like you could do like a day, maybe a week's worth of acting and make more money than most people make in 2 months of hard labor building things, like throwing their back out, like working construction. And I'm about to start doing some Habitat for Humanity stuff for my own house. It's gonna take a while, so I need to find a rental. And I'm about middle class, I'd say. But man, man. Although the reverse side of this whole Carlos Coy thing is like, so even somebody that assaulted a 9-year-old, maybe they could be a success story with mushroom therapy. And I mean, already, like, it's hard to argue because there's no control. Like, he's been in prison for 20 years. 22? I think he was sentenced in 2001. So 23 years, 22 to 23 years in prison. Like, in Texas, too. I'm sure Texas is not forgiving. Although at the same time, he's got plenty of people there. He's probably mixed up with the cartels and got connections and all that. And so, like, he's got friends to a point. But I don't know. I feel like that would also mean that he's got some enemies close by that would probably beat the crud out of him. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I'd want to talk to him. I want to be like, what were you thinking? No judgments right now. I mean, there's plenty of judgments, but like, let's just have a conversation with like, what was the situation? Why did you do this with that person? That's what I'd want to know. Like, why? Because we need to stop it. Like, that's BS. I can't stand that. Like, it's, ugh. And sorry, I guess a little backstory on that. It's like I was a little upset about Kendrick Lamar's story because I was like, well, how young was the girl that Drake did mess around with? Like, what? How young are we talking? Because there's evil and then there's evil, evil. Like, I mean, if they're a teenager, that's pretty messed up and that's pretty sad on the person's part. Like, you can't have game with older women that are actually women, like not young adults. And before 18, they're not even young adults. They're just young, too young, and like not okay. And like, and I felt bad going back to college campus. I walked around at CSU like, oh, I'm gonna see all sorts of hot chicks and like, skin tight yoga pants and all this. Oh, I did, but zero attraction. I was like, they look like kids. I was so disappointed. I was like, where were all the, because I'm older now. And so then now the people that I see that I feel like, oh, okay, they're attractive. They're like my age, like, because it's in my league. Like it was just a non-issue. I mean, it's like dating like someone who's like 10, 15 years older than you. Like, yeah, that might be a fun story to tell your friends, but it's not dateable material for the most part. Like, there's no real connection there. There's just whatever. I mean, I don't know. I was disappointed to say the least. I think now I'd have to hang out with grad students, and there's some pretty fine grad students too. So I mean, like, and I guess that's more my own lens. My own lens finds older attractive now because it's like I feel like I need to start giving them fatherly advice. Like I probably have illegitimate children as old as they are now, and it's like, and to think about trying to date that type of person, have an intelligent conversation, like, yeah. And unfortunately, it's probably more of the other idea that like young and impressionable, like kind of like in Breaking Bad, how they have kid soldiers and kids stealing drugs and stuff. Not a lot, but there is a couple scenes in there like that, and they address that too. It's very similar to Darfur. I forget how to pronounce it, but I studied that in a sociology class in college, and that was what my high school sweetheart, who's huge activist type material, gorgeous, anyways. and the half Jewish one too. So she was already, very outspoken about how unfair things are to Jewish people and how like people saying that the Holocaust didn't even happen are just like ridiculous and all of that nonsense. So there was a whole slew of problems she was trying to solve that I had no visibility into until I started dating her. Then I started getting a little riled up about that sort of thing too. It's like, how can you disrespect all these dead people by like that? I don't know, pretty easily apparently. A lot of people are disrespecting dead people. And I think there's gonna be some comeuppance, even if there is no life after this. The more people are realizing this, the more people are connecting those dots and being like, you know what? I don't care how greedy you are or how much you love money more than people. You don't get to say these things. Like, this is wrong. And so we have fact checking and all that fun stuff now. And Elon is like one of the most fact checked people on X app. He doesn't deny the Holocaust, but I mean, he's right there trying to like, cheerlead for rich, greedy people. Like, they're not so bad. They're just trying to make money or whatever. I can relate to these people's problems. But you can't relate to the people that you keep firing or working to death or like, all that. Life should be easy, especially with all these conveniences. But instead, what we got is greed, rampant greed. Still, I do sympathize, like, someone spending 22 years in prison. That's horrible. I knew somebody that spent 12 years in prison. And he would tell me stories about how, like, he'd, like, get down on his knees, look up at God or whoever was in charge and just be like, please just kill me now. Like, he was wishing for death in prison. And it's just like, that was his existence for years. Not just a few days, not just a week, years. Anyways, so that's why I am uploading the video I made last night talking about my revelations of Carlos Coy, and still great music, but not so much anymore. Like, now it's the music of somebody that did that. I don't care. Sell crack, sell coke, like drug deal, gang bang, maybe not murder people, but like, all the other crazy stuff is somewhat more forgivable than attack on a child. That's just messed up. So anyways, that's my 2 cents, and I'm off to work. Happy Monday, everybody. Ta ta. I will see you in the next one.